Welcome everyone. Our respected three of the speakers here and the invitees over here who have registered to join and to be with us from now on 2 hours, and I don't know how long it will be, but at least I guess it will be 1 hour 30 minutes will be with us fully and passionately to interact and discuss about some of the COVID issues, particularly related with public health and the children's reality. So we would wholeheartedly welcome you and in this great evening to be with us. And also we'll go for some introduction. Before going to introduce the speakers among every one of us, I would like to take the opportunity to say a little bit, maybe 2 minutes, talk about Val Avantgarde, where the platform we are here at the moment. So Val Avantgarde is basically a social value attention change-making platform that we started in 2015, and we started action-oriented work from 2018 onward, and we are very active from 2019 till date, and we are expecting that our this kind of action oriented energy will keep on going more and more over the time. But very unfortunately, when we started, I remember in 2019 very actively, by the time this COVID came, and this COVID is a new reality, and this new reality is a new dimension of the social arena that we have to bear with. So initially, the way we thought about our work plan and our kind of intention of work, then because of this reality, we had to add the COVID things with our everyday kind of work. So it is a new normal world where Valabangard is also trying to do little way some of the work relevant to COVID, which can make some sense to the social understanding and social change making of the people. So wholeheartedly from Valabangard, I really would like to welcome everyone, our great speakers over here, whom I'm going to introduce just now, and also our participant who could join now, but I'm sure that more and more will be joining with time. So I'm sure when you registered, you saw the banner and you know that who are our speaker. So just to get a little bit of introduction with our speakers, and we are very honored to have with us Dr. Arvind Singh, who is a very specialized doctor and specialist from Boston University. He's working in India. So he has got so much of diversity of experience that we are going to share over the screen. Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah. So Dr. Arvind basically is a pediatrician. So we have a child-related talk today. So he's a very specialized pediatrician, and we'll learn more about, because in Bangladesh, children cases are not very big in number, but it is growing up and up. So we should be prepared. With our understanding, our parents will be benefited, and these children we count on not only the pediatric children. When we think about children, I'm sure that we consider the children of age under 5, can be 15, can be 18, can be 24, and 28 up till into the international scale. So Dr. Aravinda has got mediating nutrition related especially, and he has got a law background as well. It's a very good combination, I see. And he is also consultant, senior consultant, Max Hospital, New Delhi, and also running a Good Health Child and Eye Care Center in New Delhi. So it is his own kind of word. He'll be telling more about before starting presenting. So Dr. Arvind has very special interest on neonatology, handling children. So that is a far advantage for today's talk. At the same time, he's directly engaging at the moment with the COVID issue. So that is another very important aspect of this and the important catch of today's meeting and sharing. So we have Dr. Aravinda, thank you so much to be with us and agreeing to be speaker of this today's seminar. And coming to our next speaker, Dr. Deepak Kumar, who is basically a public health expert and public health and management. And he is very focused with lot of arena, particularly advocacy, data management, epidemiology, statistics, and technical leadership. He's got a very long experience of more than 20 around years. And at the same time, he has managed huge kind of, particular diversity of the epidemiological work in multi-country, large-scale programs. So, and those programs are very impact-oriented program, and he worked in India, Indonesia, Nepal, Sierra Leone, Africa Belt in health system. He was a strategic planner, and he was also directly engaged with polio and VDPV, Ebola, H1N1 influenza, Nipah, Lassa fever, whatnot, so measles, cholera, and diphtheria. So those are the kind of like bacterial, viral kind of surge into the world. Different time it happened in different reality, like the COVID at the moment is a viral reality to us. So this kind of pandemic things he was in his lifetime of the working and management. He was there with some experience and some diverse experience, and COVID is another experience side because he's directly working with Delhi or WHO with the COVID related issue. So this is very kind of energy for our program, and thank you Dr. Deepak to be with us, and also to say that Dr. Deepak is one of the constant inspirer and constant push of this Valo avant-garde. When he got introduced with this Valo avant-garde, he was one kind of a person with the kind of not only thought binder, he's a member of our thought binder group, a very expert member. If you look into our website, you'll be able to see. But more beyond that, he's a kind of a like motivator, constant motivator. So sometimes when I feel like okay, oh, these things are not happening this way, he is just make us like an energy going that no, this is going to something very kind of different. You will see the difference with time. So that kind of constant energy and motivation and inspiration, Dr. Deepak, thank you very much to be with us in a different angle and different kind of capacity with Balavidgar. And I'm sure, Dr. Arvind, with time you will be also one of our very great member with time with Balavidgar. We have with Dr. Selimul Zaman, another speaker. He is basically the government person. He is a very kind of a person as working in principal scientific officer in the IDCR, Institute of Epidemiological Disease Control and Research, and this is the place where the epidemic has been initially very much. They took the leadership of controlling the epidemic. At the moment, the leadership has been in diverse hand, but still IDCR is a very strong stakeholder to take care of the national kind of this pandemic national way. So he has got a lot more experience, and I'm sure today he will bring some energy to this talk, and he will try to make an harmony between this your both of the speakers talk, because to bringing the Delhi experience and India experience, regional experience to Bangladesh, and making it more kind of harmonious and for the our participant, so that they can take some very clear message before they go back from this Zoom-based seminar. So I really want to thank every of the speaker to be with us, and I'm Dr. Nazin Akhtar. I'm the basically public health person too. I'm a public health policy plan research expert, but I have a kind of a quite longer engagement with many public health issues in Bangladesh. It's be it health system leadership and be it diversified innovative program, whatever way you can see. But I don't know, I just want to cut short my discussion over here to introduce myself that I'm basically here to moderate today's discussion on behalf of Vala Vanguard, because I'm here working as a managing director, and I'm also a founder of Vala Vanguard. So we have a team member here is Amar Ravin, who is a chair of the Vala Vanguard. He's here. At the same time, he's also hosting the meeting some way. You got the Zoom link as well from him. And our one member is Arifur Rahman, who is a manager over here for Valavan Guard, taking care of the Valavan Guard in variety of way, managing to finance to everything. And then we have Dr. Sifat, who is a program and research associate kind of person. He is bringing kind of energy to our program, any program and research work. We have with us Dr. Mr. Biplab Banerjee, who is a very kind of program and project guy, so adding a lot more program and project energy. He's a very strong and very kind of motivated member of Balavan Guard action team, basically, who are really directly working on. We have a very great team otherwise, but this is very kind of active team who are with us in every bits of action. So, and we have another member who is the youngest member is Aranno. Aranno, আপনার নামটা একটু বলেন please. Hello. Salman Usman Aronna. So he is basically one of the youngest manager with the management bits of work, and also bringing and connecting the young people. He's one of the ambassador kind of energy to this work. So he's a young leadership in Balavanga too. So with a smaller team, we are there, and we have some kind of supporting team as well behind the scenes. So we just started this journey of Valavangard, and we are trying to make some kind of little way of action. If you visit our web, you will be able to see that some drop by drop way we are trying variety of the work of change making. COVID made us a little slow, but we are trying to make another way of taking COVID as an energy, and that's why these seminars are, so that we can take some very active role in the inter-educative seminars, so that people have got the correct information around COVID. They can get more prepared by themselves, epidemiologically, understand what's in everyday life for their children, for their family. So in a variety of ways, we are trying to manage this kind of interactive talk. So today's talk is basically focused on more public health aspect of COVID, and another is the child safety net. So we'll try to make the discussion flow in that way. And finally, thanks to the all the participants who could manage to join today and who registered couldn't yet join, I'll be expecting the Tarifud and Arun will keep on touch with them, keep in touch with them, so that they can manage to join. So it will be my honest request, so that you give the energy to that. Okay, thank you so much, all the kind of honored participants over here who are in the Zoom today with Valavangard in the seminar in this evening. And not really lingering our talk, let me move on to the actual of our seminar intention. That is the two presentations we're expecting. One is from Dr. Deepak, who will be speaking more on the public health aspect, and another is Dr. Arvind, who will be speaking more on the child and pediatric aspect of safety net of this COVID-19. So we know that the cases are increasing. I don't want to go to the data statistics because case is really increasing anywhere and everywhere. Sometimes it gets down, and then over the months we see that there's a different world, and then it keep on another change of increase. So this is a very kind of confused and zigzag kind of epidemic. It's a very complex pandemic. Every day new knowledge, new information comes into. So we should be up to date with that. And because of that, this seminar will always going like this. So thanks and bear with us, please. And I'll be requesting who will be the first presenter to present, Dr. Deepak, yourself or Dr. Arvind? Who want to be first presenter? Dr. Deepak?
Whichever way you say, we can start with public health or we can start either with the clinical aspect also. Whichever way you think will be beneficial.
So Dr. Arvind?
Yeah.
Is it Dr. Deepak should or you? Who wants to present first?
I will present. I can present first.
Okay, thank you very much. So welcome to your presentation. So we'll silent ourselves for a while, and we'll be expecting that you will try to complete your presentation by maximum 20-25 minutes. So that you keep the time in your mind so that you could organize your presentation that way. Thank you so much. We are eagerly waiting to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am. So I'm starting with my presentation.
Okay.
Can anyone? Can everybody see? Can everybody see?
Yes.
We can see and hear you as well loudly, and it is very clear.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much, Dr. Nazneen, Dr. Salim, for giving me the opportunity to speak something about the COVID in pediatric age group. It is the first time I'm interacting with you people. So thank you very much for providing this podium, and good evening and salam Bangladesh. Myself, Dr. Arvind Singh, as I had already introduced to you from Delhi. We are very well aware of it. What exactly is coronavirus? What exactly is COVID-19 and novel coronavirus till date now? We all know how coronavirus is started and how rapidly it's progressed to various countries, and WHO had already declared it as a public health emergency. By the January 2020, various research papers were published that how the disease is transmitted, what are the signs and symptoms in various age groups, how these signs and symptoms as well as disease is managed by different countries in different ways. What is the mode of transmission and what is the mediator, whether it is through the seafood, it is through the birds or any other animal which is the culprit in transmitting the disease. But this topic still remains a topic of debate. We all know millions of people are infected with COVID virus and millions of people are died because of COVID virus worldwide. In Indian scenario, 14 lakh people are infected till date and 35,000 people have already lost their life. But the recovery rate is 80%. The recovery rate and fatality rate are varied from country to country, place to place and area to area. The recovery rate, the percentage is 60 to 80% and fatality rate is 0.5 to 10% according to the places and countries. Various articles reported by US, UK and China had showed that adults are more infected than children. A study from Johns Hopkins Hospital had showed that symptoms in infants and children are very mild. 90% of the children have mild or no symptoms. This is reported by a study from China which is published in Pediatrics of COVID-19. Now let's see what is the status of COVID in pediatric age group. As I am a pediatrician, I will be mainly focusing on pediatric age group. Various reported, as I had said, various reports are available from country to country, place to place and different age groups. Of course, children's less than 10 years of age group and adult above than 60 years of age group at higher risk of getting an infection. But the morbidity and mortality which is seen in children is very less. Report from the Maharashtra which showed that only 0.1% of mortality is seen in children less than 10 years of age group. And the mortality was only in a girl who was 13 years old. And along with that, that girl was also having comorbid condition like megaloblastic anemia and protein energy malnutrition. Studies had shown that children have less morbidity and mortality, but the mortality and morbidity increases with the comorbid conditions in pediatric age group. Comorbid conditions like protein energy malnutrition, anemia, chronic infection like tuberculosis, thalassemia, leukemias, nephrotic syndrome, or any other chronic diseases in children. Various reports came from Maharashtra that children are more exposed, those who are living on the street, slums, or those who are living without parent cares. Death in infants are very rare. Only a single baby death is reported from Delhi, and that is two of less than 3-month-old female baby. Now let's see what are the signs and symptoms with which children present at your clinic. The most common signs and symptoms with which children present is either no symptoms or mild cough and cold. This is the commonest symptom which children present at your clinic. Irritability, loss of appetite, loose motions are mainly seen in children of smaller age group. Till date, I had faced only one children who was of 6-month-old and just presented with the complaint of mild loose motion, 2 to 3 episodes, semi-formed stools along with the irritability and mild refusal to feed. Later on, when we followed up that case, that child turned out to be corona positive. Vomiting, pain abdomen, sore throat, headache, dry, irritating cough are mainly seen in older age group. A study from Pune had shown that only 5 children had a sign of gastroenteritis, rest all children have a sign of mild cough and cold. Pneumonia are rarely seen in children's age group. They may present with symptoms or without symptoms. A very severe presentation in children is seen, but that is very, very rare. But very unfortunate to say that we had faced a condition in New York. During a short period of time, 64 cases were reported with pediatric inflammatory multisystem syndrome. This is very important to note because this syndrome is having correlation, similar signs and symptoms that of Takayasu and Kawasaki diseases. Only one death was reported at that time, and that too of a 14-year-old child with a mild comorbid condition. Now, how to manage a case of COVID-19? Of course, this protocol is common for all age groups. We have required a coordinated and a cooperated mode of management of COVID pandemic. Equal participation of government, medical, paramedical, individuals who are infected with virus and those who are not infected with virus required an active participation to manage COVID-19. It is very difficult to manage such kind of pandemics without coordination of each other. Now, apart from the clinical management, standard operation protocols played a major role. Standard operation procedures or protocols which had shown the lockdown. Complete lockdown was a very important factor in managing the children's because children stayed at home and they are free from cross infections. Social distancing was very important factors. Special protocol was made that individuals who are going outside or who are going to the chemist shops, grocery shops or the marketplaces, which is very important to buy, they are asked to keep at least a 2 meter of distance. Another important thing is of hand washing. All children were asked to hand wash regularly at interval of 2 to 3 hours with a soap solution of for 20 seconds. But as we all know, children are very fussy. So pediatric group in our area had decided that we should give some rewards to the children, like in the form of some small gift or a token of gift, and we asked the children to speak out A to Z that completes within the 20 seconds. This is a very important practice and it really worked a lot in pediatric age group. Those children who are really fussy, who cannot use soap solution again and again, we advise them to use sanitizers with alcohol concentration of minimum 16%. Regular use of triple layer surgical mask was very important, and its disposal was also trained to the children and adults. Proper nutrition, we have to take care of the proper nutrition in children's. That nutrition should be full of vitamin C diets, high liquid content, soft diets, and that should not contain any junk food. Regular exposure to the sunlight, minimum to 10 minutes of exposure. If possible in children's, we promoted a regular exercise in the form of Zumba or yoga. Now, as a clinician, when a children or a patient comes to your clinic, we have to follow the protocol, standards college protocols, that we have to take a detailed history. What are the signs and symptoms? What are the duration of signs and symptoms? Any history of travel, any history of contact, any history of comorbidity, as I had already said, tuberculosis, asthma, diabetes, autoimmune disorders, or any malignancy. Careful examination of children is must. We have to look for their vital signs. We have to check for the oxygen saturation. We have to auscultate the chest very carefully to look for any signs of pneumonia or any crepitations or wheeze. Depending on the signs and symptoms, we have to investigate the child accordingly, whether we have to go for rapid antigen test, RT-PCR, or a serology. After we are confirmed with the diagnosis or signs and symptoms of children or any suspected children at your clinic, decide whether the child to be hospitalized or they should be isolated in the wards or in the ICU, or the child should be home quarantine. Home quarantine was the latest concept which really worked, because initially early stages of the milestones of the COVID virus, people are quarantined at the hospital. But later on, when the home quarantine came, the psychological stress was significantly decreased and the morbidity was also decreased in the children as well as in the parents. Who can be home quarantine? Only those can be home quarantine who are having very minimal signs and symptoms. But children less than 2 years of age groups are required to be hospitalized immediately. Where can be home quarantine? Home quarantine can only be done at the places where we have a separate room, separate toilet, and the facility of a person who can take care of that individual. Children who are of a smaller age groups are asked to stay with their mothers with all precautions as given in standard operation procedures. Precautions to be taken during the home quarantine: that they should stay at the home, they should stay in the room defined to them, they should be confined to the toilets which is advised to be there. They are also all asked while flushing their toilets, they should keep their cover of the commode always covered. Use 1% hypochlorite solutions or soap solutions or sanitizers to keep their room, floors and toilets clean. Treatment protocols to be followed strictly. All medicines, liquid nutritious diets, vitamin C's, Ayurvedic or homemade karas or regular sunbaths are very important while managing the patients at home quarantine. This chart is very important. Although you can't able to see the words, but I am having this chart with me if anyone want, because this is very important for the public health workers and the hospital protocol patients, because this chart will give the detailed history of the patient, the name, age, sex, with what signs and symptoms he or she is presented, what are the duration on symptoms, what is the past history of the patient, whether there is a history of travel or not, what is the severity of disease, and etc. we can see in this chart. This chart is very important. I got this chart from the CMC Vellore. This chart also shows the progress report of the patient, and which is very helpful in managing the children at hospital as well as the isolation centers. Now, if we are talking about the investigations, we have RT-PCR, rapid antigen test and serology test. As we had seen early stages, RT-PCR was available and it is the gold standard and it has highest sensitivity and specificity, whereas rapid antigen test has only 15% of sensitivity, whereas serology test also has a good sensitivity for assessing the community spread and for the plasma donation in treating the patients. These investigations are done according to the facilities available, according to the milestone of the disease, and according to the spread of the diseases. This chart is just to show how we take the RT-PCR or rapid antigen set. This is giving a detail, but I can say while taking the sample, after all precautions, we have to just insert a swab by which we take the sample using the nasal septum and we insert it deep till nasopharynx. The length of the swab is from the tip of the nose till the outer opening of the air. Swab is kept inside the nose for few seconds and then it is withdrawn and then again reinserted to take 1 to 2 samples so that reports don't come negative. Now the treatments in children's. No specific treatment or no specific guidelines are available for children's because children's are presented with very mild signs and symptoms. So we have to go for the symptomatic treatment. Symptomatic treatment for the fever, symptomatic treatment for the cough, cold, loose motion and dehydration. Of course, we have to regularly check the severity or the progression of diseases. Warm water is a very important thing. We ask the parents to regularly use steam, gargles if possible in the children's. Nebulization is required in those children's in which there is a wheeze, or even if the children require some humidifiers, we can use them nebulizer. Zinc is a very important. Various studies coming from India as well as from the international areas that zinc, role of zinc, vitamin D and vitamin C is very important in preventing the severity of COVID virus in pediatric age group. Nutritious and light diet, as I said, is very important. Healthy diet should be included in the children's diet and it should be rich in vitamin C. Mild workout if possible in older children's age group. A progress chart and regular monitoring is very important. Daily we have to take fever at least 2 hourly, and if the fever increases to 100 Fahrenheit 2 times in a day, we have to inform our health worker. Simultaneously, we have to make a progress chart whether the disease is progressing or resolving. Another is breastfeeding. Those babies who are on breastfeed, this is in this case we have to see whether the baby is infected or mother is infected. If mother is infected, still the babies are advised to be breastfed exclusively with all protection. Since this is a nasopharyngeal transmission, the mother is asked to take all precautions, and if possible, if mother is sick and can't feed their baby, then there is availability of wet mother or the milk banks if possible. This is the progress chart as I had already discussed. If the babies are asymptomatic, we have to regularly check for any progress in the signs and symptoms. There is a new score. This is very important score to determine whether the disease is progressing or not. This is National Early Warning System 2. Another in symptomatic C, as we see whether the disease is improving or worsening, we have to use News 2 score. This is the News 2 score. If anyone wants this chart, he can take it from me. This includes the respiratory rate, the oxygen saturation level, the oxygen level, the systolic blood pressure level, the pulse rate, the conscious level of the baby, and the temperature. This is what the score says. If the score is 0, monitor the vital signs every 12 hourly and there is no action needed. Patient to remain in level 1 care. If the score is 1 to 4, monitor 6 hourly, assess the clinical signs and symptoms, discuss with the consultant whether requires shifting to the level 2 wards or not. If it's 5 or more, monitor 1 hourly and decide accordingly whether the shifting upgradation to the higher level is required or not. If the score is 7 or more, shift immediately to the ICU and manage the child according to the ICU protocols. Various medicines are available in the market and worldwide, but in pediatric age group, we are using medicines cautiously. Various medicines which are available are HCG, anti-malarial medicines, steroids like dexamethasone, antiviral like remdesivir, which is also known as the Ebola drug. Dr. Deepak can tell better about it. Favipiravir, that is Fabivlu, tocilizumab, that is used in rheumatoid arthritis or psoriatic. It is an interleukin-6 inhibitor, ivermectin, and plasma therapy. One thing I would like to tell at this stage, that in pediatric age group, studies have shown that the less than 10% of less than 10 years of age group of children had hardly required these medicines, but the children above than 10 years who required hospitalization and ICU care, various trials are done with antiviral, anti-malarial, and interleukin-6 inhibitor drugs. Now, at last, what are the takeaway messages for the health workers as well as the clinicians? Parents need to be vigilant while taking care of the babies. If the babies are newborn, they have to be extra cautious. If the babies are older age group, they have to be more cautious because deterioration is more in older age group of children. Proper history and examination is very important. As I said, we have to look for the comorbid conditions because the severity and sickness is more in children with comorbid conditions. Of course, the coordination of the central and state government, infected and non-infected patient, as well as community is very important in managing such COVID pandemics. Whether the children need to be home quarantine or hospitalization, this is a very important fact because home quarantine has less morbidity and children come up better because of the less psychological stress. Children are at higher risk, so they need special care, but they have less morbidity and mortality. Strictly follow all treatment protocols and guidelines. Patience balance between the physical and mental health is must in managing the COVID pandemic, both in adult as well as in children. Thank you very much. Stay safe, stay alert to manage this COVID pandemic. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arvind. It is such a kind of explicit and kind of total presentation. I was wondering that if we would know that it is so medical things will be there, purposefully we could invite some more doctors also. They could be highly benefited, public health physicians particularly also. So I'm sure there are also variety of mix of the participants over here. The very important part is in the pediatric or the children aspect of the COVID is not much thought about in our country, because when the COVID started, it was more kind of, it's a kind of concern of COVID for the adult community, although there are very small number every day, increasing number. So over the last couple of months, every day the number is increasing, but comparing to the adult kind of, concentration of the epidemic, this is comparatively little lower. Because of that, it is of less preparedness is there. So I was wondering that because India is far advanced in that, if I can see over here from your presentation that that will be very helpful for Bangladesh also. So we can now make ourselves more kind of, early prepared and early kind of, alert by these, because sometimes the children severity cannot be understood because they are always very lively and active. So sometimes we miss, and when to take them in hospital is also very important. That's must be understood. So your presentation really and clearly gave that clue. At the same time, I saw that this is very interesting that the support, the comprehensive support that I'm sure that it is a learning by doing that you all people caught up this understanding, because uh, we managed many disease and you managed the pediatrician many disease, but how to manage the children with COVID, it's a very new kind of knowledge, and this knowledge is a very plus point for Bangladesh because we can learn from our neighboring country. At the same time, the score which we can draw for our country hospitals as well. I was looking to maybe we will request your this score things to be sent to us, and we can communicate. And Dr. Selmi is here can also take some of these informations back to the system of Bangladesh, whether we can use this kind of score in our children's management in the hospital system. Thank you so much. We'll be going for some question, of course, but before that, I really want to request Dr. Deepak for going for his own presentation. Afterwards, we will make a kind of little bit of discussion and also asking some definitive question relevant to the topic, maybe 2-3 questions. Then we'll go to our kind of participants so that they can raise some questions also, and those can be discussed and communicated. We'll take more time from participants as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Deepak. I would like to request you to make your presentation, please. So after your presentation, we will open for some discussion and we'll ask some particular
Yeah.
question relevant to today's talk. Thank you.
Please allow me to share the presentation?
Yeah,
And,
please. Please, yeah. We know that there will be two presentations. Thank you.
uh, I hope everybody is able to see.
Yes, thank you. We can see this presentation is just, and you are audible too. Thank you.
Great. So, good evening and Assalamu alaikum, everyone. It has been an honor to be interacting with all of you. And at the outset, I would like to express my wholehearted thankfulness to Wallo Avangrid for starting this initiative, which has already started proving that it is making dent in public health interventions and people, and especially the global public health community across countries, because I'm aware that participants from Bangladesh, from India, and today I'm seeing a friend from US is also joined today, and they're all seeing some of the lessons that we are sharing with each other, and the entire idea that Wallo Avangrid has piloted, and which is being proving very successful, is that let us share our technical knowledge and experience with each other, so as to make the public health interventions more effective and efficient. And since we are talking about COVID-19, one of the aspects that is very much evident is that it is not the lack of the science or the lack of instruments or the lack of diagnostic capabilities which is making much of problem. The main challenge is the management and the leadership of the entire strategic planning across various countries in the world. So, and you would see that those countries where there are weaker systems, weaker health systems, weaker, poor commitments from the political leaders, and confounded with the poor community participation. This is exactly the big and right mixture to propagate COVID-19 among the community. So I'll stop here and then I'll say that the topic that I'll be taking today is I'll be sharing a couple of stories. So Dr. Nazneen has already introduced me. In short, I would like to only say that I'm a storyteller. So, I like telling stories, and this is all I do. And this is all I think makes, people remember the technical aspects more easily, and especially when we want to use the lessons. And I think the experiences when they are mixed with stories and anecdotes and the real life challenges and experiences, this is where we can learn more effectively from each other. So in addition, the second aspect of my presentation would be to share lessons. So overall, I'll be answering fundamentally two questions through my deliberation. One is which countries in Southeast Asia are doing best in beating COVID-19? This is the first question that I thought would be most pertinent for today's discussion. And second is what are the key lessons that we can learn from each other, especially from Southeast Asia region countries. And when I'm saying Southeast Asia region countries, how exactly could be a one standard instrument to measure progress, because each country, you would agree with me, is very unique and brings forward its unique challenges, whether it's demographic, political, economic, or social challenges, cultural specific challenges. So to even think of one standard measurement tool to say which country is doing better comparative to other, it is definitely not an easy task. And I'll be honest in saying that I'm not going to do this mistake, which usually we see that the journalist and mass media communication people are often doing it. So they start comparing India with Bangladesh, start comparing India with Nepal, Bangladesh with India, Bangladesh with Sri Lanka, and this is they usually do, not uncommonly it is seen. So I will not like to do this mistake. However, I thought there has to be some mechanisms to compare. So what better than looking at the epidemiologic curve? So let us understand and let us have an agreement that any country where we would see a sharp descending slope of COVID-19 epidemic, there we can say that they are winning and they are coming and they're almost flattening the curve, something which you see on the left side. On the right side, you see if a country's COVID-19 epidemic curve is still in the progress and is in the ascending slope phase, then we can say that they need actions. And what those actions, we can discuss them in brief, of course. So I'll start by saying that, what exactly is Southeast Asia region? So, there are 11 countries in total. So I hope you can see my cursor moving here. So we have, I'll start by in a descending order, if it's okay with you. Countries, especially having least number of cases of COVID-19 to moving on to countries having highest number of cases of COVID-19 in Southeast Asia region. So there are total 11 countries, which includes DPRK, which in short we also called as North Korea. And then we have Timor-Leste, we have Bhutan, we have Myanmar, we have Sri Lanka, we have Maldives, we have Thailand, we have Indonesia, we have Bangladesh, Nepal, and India. So these are the 11 countries. So in total, if you see, the total population of Southeast Asia region is highest in the world. If you look at, there are 6 regions in the world, and this can and there are two group of countries which usually people compare, look into when they want to compare each other. One is the SAARC countries, and another group of countries is called Southeast Asia region countries. Now, in my understanding, comparing countries within Southeast Asia region would make more sense, primarily because we would see that the travel and intermixing of community among some of the countries, especially Pakistan, Afghanistan, we would see there is less, and especially when you see India, Bangladesh, Nepal being, contributing to the highest number of population, including Indonesia. So we see that the travel from Afghanistan and Pakistan are little comparatively less. So coming back to the point that when we look at the Southeast Asia region, overall we see that there are more than 1.6 million COVID-19 cases that have been confirmed till date. And if you look at the total death, there are more than 38,000. Now this number may have slightly increased for today because this presentation I made for last weekend. And so there could be a little bit of data that has increased. So pardon me for that. And I thought it will be good to have a presentation completed. Now, Southeast Asian as an overall, if you see, they have an attack rate of 87%, more than 87%. And we see that the case fatality in Southeast Asia region in these 11 countries has been around 2.3. And the global case fatality, if you look at, is approximately 6% now. So you can say that less number of people comparative to the other regions are dying in Southeast Asia overall. Now, is it true for all the countries in Southeast Asia? We will explore those aspects in our presentation. And then, so let us begin with the country which is having least number of cases. And when you talk about least, there cannot be a least than 0, you see. So which is the country which is having 0 cases in Southeast Asia region until till date? And that is DPRK, which we call North Korea. Now there are a couple of theories around what's happening there. I mean, I'm only talking theory because I don't know the detail, like many public health experts, because they need to go there to see what's happening there. But from the media, if you capture, you would see that there has been communication to the community from Kim that if there are COVID-19 cases, they would face serious consequences. Now, this is one way of controlling COVID-19 for sure, but what I'm not sure about as a public health person is the rightest way, because the other sect of people, especially the public health experts, say that there is a continuation of transmission even in North Korea, which has not been captured. So we will, in our presentation, because DPRK has 0 cases, we will not be discussing that country today. So what means is that in today's presentation, we'll be discussing about 10 countries, excluding 10 countries in total, and we will not be discussing DPRK because they are having 0 cases, so no point of analyzing them. So we'll start with a country which is showing the least number of cases. So let me look at, if you look at this bar chart, you would see that the cases by week have been arranged right from the beginning of the COVID-19 outbreak, and they have been stacked over each other for respective countries, and all these 10 countries have been positioned on the right hand side. So let us look at the first one, which is having the less number of cases, which is Timor-Leste. This is a country which is here, very small country. So when we see this country, we see that the overall, based on the criteria that we already set forward in our presentation early, we see that they have already flattened their curve, and not only flattened, they are maintaining 0 status for quite some time. And the attack rate in this country, that is Timor-Leste, is also very less, 1.9, due to which, and the population is also very less. You can see they hardly have 1.2 million population of total, and due to which the total number of cases, if you compare the percentage of cases that Timor-Leste have contributed so far, has been less than 0.01% in the entire Southeast Asia. So this is a situation where, and we see that last couple of weeks, I mean, and especially following mid-April, we don't see any changes in number of cases. And importantly, there have not been any death of COVID infected person. And the first case in COVID-19 in Timor-Leste was confirmed on the 21st of March. And exact place where it started in Timor-Leste is still unknown. Why I'm saying this is unknown because they just confirmed and the person was not able to be traced later on. And following which, immediately on the next day, that is 22nd of March, Timor-Leste declared the state of emergency, leading to closure of schools, cancellation of mass gatherings, limiting public gatherings to 5 people, and all international arrivals faced a mandatory 14-day quarantine. Not just imagine, a small country following the first case confirmation has literally, quarantined all the arrivals which they were coming following 21st of March, and they were all put in mandatory 14 days quarantine. Now, what better it can be? Because in this situation, what they did was that they traced all the infection carefully. They had all the infections all confined to one quarantine center, two quarantine center, and so they could limit it. Now, there can be an argument that it was a small country, it has ability to go for microscopic vision, microscoping public health interventions, but they cannot be emulated in other larger countries like ourselves and Bangladesh, of course. But then there is a lesson to it, and the lesson is that if you trace all the contacts, if you are able to scientifically trace every contact, every suspected contact, you can largely limit the infection and ensure that there is a targeted intervention in place. Now we'll go forward, and then the next country in row is Bhutan. So when we look at Bhutan, where is Bhutan in here? So we see that Bhutan is here, right? So this is Bhutan. You see a small yellow orange dot, very small. So this is the smallest dot, and then there is a little bit bigger dot, because Bhutan has totally reported 92 cases. And if you look at largely at Bhutan also, they have also passed through multiple phases where they have come down and touched, there have been a couple of days when there was no COVID-19 positive cases reported. But if you look at overall, they have come up, gone down, come up, gone down. Now, what exactly has happened in Bhutan? Now, Bhutan, if you see, the attack rate is a little higher, which is 11.7%. Now, the first case in Bhutan, if you look at this bluish stack here, bluish bar here, this is exactly corresponding to the 6th of March, when Bhutan confirmed its first case of COVID-19, which was a elderly guy who returned from US, and then he actually returned from US via India, and then later on, a couple of weeks later, his wife also tested positive when he was airlifted to US back for his management. Now, from the 6th to 20th of March, like 14 days later, there was his wife tested positive, which I was mentioning. And just in a couple of more days, which is 23rd of March, Bhutan actually closed all the international border because they sensed it that the only route usually undertaken by travelers is air route. So they sealed all the international travel. And just on following few days, that is 25th and 29th of March, 2 Bhutanese students were testing positive. So this was the first Bhutanese nationals which tested positive. And this is what triggered the response from the national highest authority when Prime Minister Dr. Lotte announced that the quarantine period for COVID-19 in Bhutan to be extended from 14 days to 21. Now, this is interesting because when other countries were quarantining people, sick people for 14 days, then Bhutan decided to extend the quarantine period from 14 days to 21 days. Now, they actually were asked by global public health community, what is the rationale? But then they said that if we quarantine them for a longer period of time, we will be able to establish more control measures and not allowing the virus to spill in the community. That was their philosophy. And you know that one of the important aspects of Bhutan, which we all know, is that they follow the happiness index and they choose life over livelihood. And so and people have strong community trust in government. And please note this, please note this, that in Bhutan, people have very strong community trust in government. which translated into whatever deliberations, whatever guidelines, whatever directions were being given by the Bhutanese government were literally and seriously followed more by most Bhutanese. Now, Bhutan also prepared a national preparedness and response plan even before the first COVID-19 case came into the country, and that was 6th of March. So they had a preparedness and response plan ready, and they also established a mental health task force, which is very unique. I think from my earlier discussion with Dr. Nazneen, we often interact and discuss that how important it is to address the psychosocial aspects of COVID-19 impact. And imagine a country of the size of Bhutan has already looked into it. They already had this mental health task force, which was instituted with a 24 and cross 7 helpline, which means anytime any person can just pick the phone and call for psychosocial first aid support. And in addition, psychosocial first aid trainings were also provided to the frontline workers as well as interested citizens, those who wanted to volunteer. And you will be very surprised to see that thousands of Bhutanese signed up for volunteering in for a through a lifelong volunteering program, which is a part of a larger disaster-related operations. And the program website almost crashed because for the first time, a lot of people wanted to volunteer. So this is the level of community trust which I was talking about. And so all of it has contributed to Bhutan, controlling the situation. If you see, they are repeatedly, whenever there is spike, both government as well as community together in tandem are able to bring down the spike. And I'm very positive that this will continue. Now, going back to the next country, which is Myanmar. If you look at this, Myanmar. So Myanmar is here on the eastern side of Bangladesh. So yes, so Myanmar is very unique. I mean, why I'm saying unique, I'll justify this. So Myanmar actually totally contributed to 0.02% of the entire Southeast Asia cases, which we already talked about. And they have the cumulative cases are 346. Now, the attack rate and the case fatality is also very low. So attack rate is less than 1% and case fatality is less than 2%. And there is no single, but there are unique challenges in I was saying that Myanmar is very unique in terms of COVID-19 response and unique in the entire Southeast Asia. Why? Because number one, there is no single authority in the government, which leads to difficulty in implementation of the program. And this is mainly